Over the past couple of months, we have been getting my 2004 Z1000 ready for the 2026 riding season. What's going on, everybody? My name is Ty, and welcome back to Tyler Nelson Builds. As mentioned, the 2026 riding season has officially arrived. It's a bit late this year up here in Canada, especially since I'm what you would call a fair weather driver. Even on a day like today where it's about 16 degrees Celsius, once you get up to the higher speeds, these things are pretty unenjoyable to ride. Pretty much 20 degrees Celsius and up is when I actually start to enjoy the ride. But I did have to bring this baby back into the shop. We gotta do a couple small jobs on this bike so that I am 100% confident that I can take this thing wherever I want to this summer. So since the last video, we have developed a problem, and it's a pretty big problem. And that problem is I got to start the bike here. So cover your ears. As you can see, we don't have our headlights anymore. Now, occasionally I'll be riding and the headlights will start working again. So I'm assuming, and number one rule, don't assume, but I'm assuming that whatever we touch to get the turn signals working again is probably the cause. The strange thing is the turn signals still work. So let's dive into this and see why the heck we lost our headlights. We're just going to check to see if one of these has a good ground, and it does, which is kind of what I assumed happened. So I guess what we can do next is actually check our fuses. Again, we're probably gonna have to start this freaking thing. It's got no power. Well, I was kind of fiddling around with stuff in here, and all of a sudden, the light started working again. Everything, even the high beams, it all came back to life, and I cannot, no matter how much wiggling I do or turning of the steering post, I cannot get it to mess up again. So obviously it's not fixed. There's still a problem there, but right now with it not being broken, there's no way for me to fix what's not broken. So we're gonna have to put a rain call on this issue until it presents itself once again. So let's go ahead and I guess button everything back up again, and let's move on to the next thing on the list. Originally, I wasn't going to film the oil change on this bike because I thought if you're watching this video, you probably know how to change your own oil. But then I thought over the past 10 years of my career, I've learned a thing or two that could save you time, money, and prevent a lot of common mistakes that I see in the industry, even for something as simple as an oil change. So I'm starting a segment on this channel where I teach you guys how to do the job right the first time. Welcome to what I'm dubbing Thread Carefully. So what are you going to need for an oil change? On this bike, not much. Firstly, get yourself some good quality oil, or at the very least, oil that meets the minimum manufacturer's recommended oil grade. In this case, it's JSO MA2 10W40. My cocktail of choice today is 1 liter of Royal Purple and 3 liters of Lucas motorcycle oil. And no, this isn't just some magic formula. I just had a liter of Royal Purple left over and I don't want to waste it. Next thing you're going to need is a good quality oil filter. And how do you know it's a good quality oil filter? Well, if you get an OEM filter, you're done. You know it's a good quality filter. Literally the one that was specifically made for your vehicle. If you don't go with OEM, however, just check that whatever oil filter manufacturer filter you got is rated for higher than your recommended oil change interval. Most of the time, the OEM filter is only going to be a couple bucks more than the cheapest aftermarket filter anyways, so that's why I usually just go with an OEM. Next on the list is probably the most overlooked part of every oil change, the drain plug gasket. You can buy a drain plug gasket kit like this for under 20 bucks, and it will not only last the life of your vehicle, but it'll also do your mother's, brothers, and grandmother's as well. So why not change out that drain plug gasket and have the peace of mind that it's new and not going to leak. Last but not least, we're going to need tools to change the actual oil. Usually this includes a ratchet and socket set, maybe an oil filter wrench. Oh, and if you don't want to be making oil angels on the ground afterwards, get yourself a drain pan as well. Before we even start the oil change on this bike, there's one very crucial step before we touch anything, drain any sort of oil, change any sort of filters. And that is to check the oil level and oil quality of the oil that's already in the vehicle at the end of its oil life. This is going to give you an indication if the engine is burning any sort of oil or leaking any sort of oil, as well as how well maintained the engine is in general. So I'm going to go ahead and use the sight glass on this bike to check the oil level and quality before I drop it out, just to make sure that it's still at or close to its maximum mark and it isn't blacker than the night. And then and only then we can go ahead and perform the oil change on this bike. So then let's get to work. First we have to loosen and remove the drain plug. This is an art because you need to be careful enough not to drop it in the drain pan, but also be quick enough that you don't get oil all over yourself. Once removed, we can go ahead and swap out the old drain plug gasket for a freshie, obviously making sure that you have the correct size. Once the oil is drained, it's time to reinstall this oil drain plug. And let me tell you, until you get what I call the mechanic's feel on how tight this should be, use a torque wrench and torque to factory spec. Next, we're going to remove the oil filter. Kawasaki puts this filter in a pretty dumb spot on this bike, so I just shove a piece of cardboard below the filter to direct oil away from getting on the hot exhaust headers. This next step isn't necessary, but I'm a freak, so I like to cut my filters open and look inside of them. You can buy these filter cutters pretty cheap, and looking at the bottom of the canister as well as in between the pleats of the filter can give you a really good indication of the engine's health. So now it's time to talk about a highly debatable topic, to pre-fill or not to pre-fill your oil filter. Now you might say, oh, I only pre-fill it when the oil filter isn't on an angle, or modern engines are so good that 2 to 3 seconds without oil pressure isn't going to hurt it. That 2 to 3 seconds every oil change is doing some sort of wear to your engine. I don't care what anybody says. That extra 2 to 3 seconds where it could have had oil pressure if you pre-filled your filter is doing something. And that is why I pre-fill all of my oil filters. Again, this oil filter on this bike is on an angle. But the way that oil filters are designed, if you're pre-filling your oil filter, the only place that the oil can re-escape out of the oil filter is through this hole in the middle. So as long as you're quick with it, and it does take some experience, the second that you get this locked onto where it threads on, it's not going to spill any oil anywhere. And I'll demonstrate that for you right now. So as you can see, because I bought a good quality OEM filter, they do stuff like this, where this O-ring that goes onto that cooler is pre-lubricated. If your filter that you bought doesn't come pre-lubricated like that, you want to take some of this fresh oil and lubricate that seal. Not only does it prevent it from seizing up and sticking to that the next time you try to take this off, it's also going to keep that seal from drying out. So like I said, if we do this carefully and quickly and get it onto that stud, the only place that this thing can leak is out of this center portion right here. So let's go ahead just like that. So as long as we're holding pressure on that center portion, as you can see, no extra leakage. And for God's sakes, guys, stop putting these things on with a filter wrench. The torque spec on these spin-on filters is hand tight. Go until you hear your elbow click. Remember, cleanliness is next to godliness, even if your oil filter isn't next to your hot exhaust. Now it's time to fill the engine with some fresh oil. Luckily, Cowie engineers made this job pretty idiot-proof and tell you exactly how much oil to put in. But I'm going to ignore this and start with about 3 quarts and add from there. It's always easier to add oil afterwards rather than remove it. Once we know we're between the marks on our sight glass, we have to start the bike up to fill up the rest of our oil filter so that we can get an accurate level measurement. I'm going to adjust the level from here until it's just about at the maximum line to allow for settling and heat expansion. And just like that, you're done, and done correctly. Well, as this build series is coming to an end, I want to wish everyone a safe and sunny riding season this year. I guess all that is left is to give this old girl a bath and keep the new chain and sprockets maintained. If you're interested in seeing my wash and wax routine, as well as how I clean and lubricate my motorcycle chains, leave me a comment down below. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, I would really appreciate it. And don't forget to click on that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future uploads. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!